Is it just me, or is anyone else also getting annoyed by how female main characters are written lately, especially in Romantasy? I also made a video discussing male main characters, why they're all starting to feel the same, but we also need to talk about the female main characters. Because what used to be exciting, layered female main characters with real nuance now feels like the same copy-pasted female character across every book. And while they're meant to feel empowering the way that they are written, to be honest, and I hope this does not come across as harsh, they often end up coming across as pick-me's. And I think the reason behind that is what I like to call the girl-bossification of female main characters. So today, as both a reader and an aspiring author, I want to unpack what that actually means, the cliché tropes it includes, why they're problematic, and how writers can create better, more complex female leads. Welcome to the channel and to the podcast where I ramble about stories and books, music, and movies. If these are things that you're interested in discussing, then make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Now, let's get into it. After years of criticism of poorly written female characters, think damsels in distress in princess movies, or shallow characters who exist only to serve as love interests or objects of desire for the male characters, the strong female character finally arrived. And that shift was needed. That didn't just happen in movies, where most of this criticism of these characters was directed at, but it also happened in books too. And with the rise of book talk, readers especially fell in love with Romantasy, a genre full of empowered female leads. As one article puts it, many romantic fantasy novels give female characters power that reduces female vulnerability and expands choices. Well, that's also part of why I love Romantasy too. Lately, the writing has started to feel lazy. One critique I read about movies, which I think also applies to books too, says, "These days, it seems fashionable to try to hide poor writing behind an ideological message. Look, I'm putting forward a strong female character, but toxic audiences won't accept her. No, just do your job." That part, "no, just do your job," is basically directed at the writers. And while it does not apply necessarily to every single romantasy book that is being put out right now, there are still a lot of great ones coming out. To some extent, it's true to what's being put out right now in the romantasy genre. I feel like there's a lot of underdeveloped writing, and it's clear in how it feels like every female main character talks the same, acts the same, and faces the same dilemmas. They're independent, they banter with the main lead, they wield swords, they're confident, they're cool. Basically, girl bosses, but make it medieval, served on repeat. And that, right there, is why I call it the epidemic of girl bossification of female characters. The message is great, but the execution, not so much. And the proof of that bad execution is in those same overused, cringy cliches that keep occurring over and over again in those books, and in those characters specifically. And that's what I want to talk about next. I feel like the one main cliché trope that sums up this problem is the badass female main character trope. You know her. She's independent, never misses a chance to show off her skills. She's feisty, angry, always has something to prove. And most of the time, she's either a warrior, a thief, or some kind of assassin. Now, in my opinion, as an aspiring author myself, every trope can work as long as it's written well. The problem isn't the idea of a strong female character, it's the execution. And this specific archetype has been repeated in almost every romantasy book lately, to the point that it kind of lost its meaning. And the reason that happened lies in all the cliches that accompany it. So let me tell you what those cliches are. First cliche is the character's bad behavior that keeps getting labeled as powerful. And this isn't me saying that female characters have to be sweet, kind, or fit old expectations of how women should behave. Because if a male character acted the same way, constantly snapping at people, being arrogant for no reason, I dislike him just as much. To give an example of that, I read a book earlier this year where the main character, who comes from nothing, ends up at the palace that is full of the magical people who rule the kingdom. And when she meets the prince of this kingdom, who obviously lives in that palace, she's rude and she talks back to him as if that wouldn't get her into trouble. And while it's meant to show confidence, it doesn't come off that way. This isn't strength, it's reactiveness. And it makes the character annoying and impulsive. Now, the second cliche is that this character is basically gorgeous. But of course, she doesn't know it. And I know a lot of people talk about this one, and it's actually toxic. She's written as the girl who has the kind of beauty that gets her noticed by royalty and ends up with multiple men fighting over her. And the issue is not that she's beautiful, there's nothing wrong with that. It's her inner monologue always being something like, no one's ever looked at me that way before, or I'm not like those other girls, or no one ever notices me. But then she ends up with the most attractive men in the story. She never realized her beauty, right? And he makes her realize how beautiful she is and all of that. She was waiting for him, basically, to tell her all these things. And on top of that, these characters almost brag about not caring about how they look. And this leads me to the next cliche. And it's that the female main character rejects all the nice things she's given, from dresses to jewelry and basically all kinds of luxuries. She's meant to be above it all in some way, not superficial. And she claims to prefer her poor ways of living, while despising the castles and the palaces she ends up in. I get the motivation behind that, especially if she's supposed to be at odds with those offering her these things. But throughout the story, that resentment eventually disappears, almost instantly when she falls for the male main character, who is usually from that wealthier world. And while this trope is meant to showcase the female main character as being empowering or empowered or strong and all of those things, instead, it comes off as her trying to be not like other girls. Also, side note, the lighting changed, so I felt like I needed to acknowledge that. Hope that doesn't change a lot of the vibe of this video. Now, the fourth cliche is that these characters rarely have female friendships. When they do, it's usually just one friend, a background character who exists mainly so that this female main character can forget about her while she eventually goes on her quest or on her journey or on a mission and so on. There's also constant emphasis on her being different and strong. While it's not the intention, it does end up framing other girls in the story as weak or superficial for embracing traditionally feminine traits. And a lot of the time, strength in those stories ends up being defined as rejecting femininity. And the final cliche that I want to discuss in this video, while there are so many others that I could go over, but we would be here for much longer if I were to do that. But that final cliche that I want to discuss today is that this character lacks vulnerability. She doesn't usually have emotional depth, which makes her distant and empty. She avoids sharing her feelings, lashes out, or throws tantrums without deeper reasoning behind those behaviors beyond she's a strong female character. If the story showed why she's guarded or defensive, it would make her more layered and realistic. But it doesn't, which makes it so hard to root for such a character. So why is this trope along its cliches so problematic? First, the way these characters are written to show strength through constant fighting, rejecting femininity, avoiding other women, and always trying in some way to prove themselves to men throughout the story, ends up portraying femininity as weakness. These characters act as if there's only one way to be strong, that is through adopting masculine traits, physical toughness, competitiveness. But that's not empowerment. It's just internalized misogyny dressed up as progress. Women don't need to mirror men to be powerful. Strength can come from a woman simply owning her feminine traits. Second, these characters are perfect, and this creates impossible standards, making them feel less like people and more like ideals. They lack real flaws, vulnerabilities, or personal growth, which makes them hard to relate to and robs the story of emotional depth. On top of that, they reject traditionally feminine traits and feminine interests, but still fit the beauty standards they're supposedly rebelling against, which makes them come off as hypocritical. And finally, they often pride themselves on being not like other girls and isolating themselves from other women. True female empowerment includes supporting and uplifting each other as women. But these characters end up reinforcing the exact divisions they're supposed to dismantle. Now, to fix this, we need to ask, can we write strength in female characters differently? Personally, I'm now gravitating more towards softer female main characters, ones who own their femininity, are ambitious and talented in their own way, who are still important to their world, without needing to adopt masculine traits. And I think This is the solution. Bringing forward feminine representations of strength. When female characters let their feminine traits shine and they're proud of these traits, that's when the empowerment message works. Not when femininity is rejected, but when it's embraced. Otherwise, we end up with female characters who are, ironically, a little misogynistic themselves. And another thing I want to add is that I think we can do much better by making these characters self-aware and introspective. They don't just react to events, but actually think deeply and have insecurities that feel real rather than the tired surface level insecurities about their looks. Characters in general, from what I know, are the most compelling when they have depth, when they challenge us, when they force us to empathize with them even when we don't agree with their decisions. And that's what real women are like, nuanced, layered, and fully human. Portraying them any other way, as perfect or as one-dimensional, does a disservice not just to the storytelling, but to women themselves. So, there you have it. My take on how badly written female characters can be these days and how they're all undergoing this girl-bossification process lately. Of course, these are just my opinions, so I'd love to know yours. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And what tropes do you think are making female characters less nuanced and hard to root for? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss future videos. And check out the podcast version of Once Upon a Ramble on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. If you want to connect more, you can follow me on my Instagram and my TikTok, linked in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, we'll meet again next week. Mwah! Bye!